Hello, everyone that owns a business and might be thinking somewhere down the road, whether in the near future or far down the road, what you might do when you decide you don't want to keep running your own business. A lot of people look at selling their business, sometimes for the employees, sometimes to family members, and sometimes to the outside group. And of course, there's a lot of different alternatives. This is really just about focusing on getting the best price for your business. And I want to take a moment out to just take the perspective or help you get the perspective of how buyers look at businesses when they're looking at ads and listings for sale. Just got a call today from a gentleman that I know real well, and he's looking at the business that's for sale. And he said, none of these numbers even make sense. Is it even worth following up? And I said, well, here's what I thought, and you can make your own decision on that. But I want to share with you the 11 general principles that people look at. Now, it's really important that you think through the process in ahead of time about selling your business, whether you're talking about doing it right away or years down the road, or maybe you never want to sell. But in case you are thinking about that, keep in mind that there's a lot of things that stand in the way. Now, this is a pretty extreme example from Forbes magazine, but if you look at Exit Planning Institute, they'll show themselves that about 70% of businesses just never sell. This is from a 2016 article on October 24th from Forbes, showing even a more extreme number, 90%. I don't quite think that's quite the way the world is, but I know it can be really tough and really surprising to a lot of people who go in this thinking, I'm just going to flip my business and put it on the market and retire someday. And look, a lot of people want to get in. They want to start up by starting up. You know, they can buy a franchise. They can start a business from scratch if they just want to struggle to hope that someday it'll make some money. But when they buy an existing business, they're starting up, making money right away. That's one of the great things about acquiring your business. Plus the fact that you've got this incredible, cool legacy. That's why we call our company Legacy Venture Group. It's because we're all about that legacy aspect. We love working with business owners who truly care what happens to their business after it is sold. It's also important to get a great price for your business. And we're talking a little bit about that right now. We're talking about just about that initial perspective. Look, there's at least 11 different essential details that people look at. Now, this is a hard to read slide, too much data on it. I realize that, blah, 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 blah. You can see all these little red notes on there. We're going to go through all that right now. But when people look at ads on the internet, this is from the Business Brokers of Florida, but there's things like BizQuest, BizMySell, all that sort of stuff out there. A lot of people are going to the internet to say, well, does this business make sense? We're going to talk about some of those factors. Now, first of all, you're going to need to know how much of your business is earning. I kid about the fact that there's EBIT and EBITDA, and there's net operating income, and there's a number at the bottom of your tax return, a different number maybe at the bottom of your profit and loss statement. I don't know why, but it happens like that for most of the businesses that I look at. Then there's the seller's discretionary earnings and EBITDA. Forget all those numbers and letters and all that sort of stuff. Let's just talk for one moment about that. SDE, seller's discretionary earnings. There's a lot of different terms for that, but that's all the money that a person can make in the business before writing off cars and appreciation and depreciation, etc. Of a working owner in the business, taking everything they possibly can instead of writing things off like we a lot of times do, so we don't want to have to pay more taxes than we need to. Now, EBITDA is sort of like that, except for it's imagine if you own 20 of the particular business, and you can't be in the same 20 and run them like an operator, so you'd have to have a manager in there, a full-time market manager, not your brother, your nephew, the cousin, or your spouse that's getting paid too much or too little. This is just a market value for that. So one is the number that you get if you ran multiple locations and you weren't going to work in it. The other one is that number that you get if you work in the business and you're taking everything you possibly can. All right, let's be done with that for one moment and move on to the different things. One of the things that people look at right when they see the ads is, do the earnings justify the price? So I guess I need to correct my typo on there. Does earnings justify price? Do earnings? Yes, I know a little bit about English, but I know more about selling businesses. I just want to talk to you. There's a first blush when people look at it going, does this even make sense? And also, the second thing they're going to ask about is, well, I'll go to that in a minute, but let's talk about the price to seller's discretionary earnings. There's no single way to determine the price of a business, but there are general guidelines, and a lot of people are looking at things like, well, the multiple of 3 or 4 or 5 or 2 or 1 times whatever number. People are looking on the internet, and today there's more information available to people on the internet, so people are really scrambling to look at that, and they're looking at comparing your business to a lot of other businesses. Now, a lot of times they're looking at other ones that are for sale instead of what have sold. That's the private data that's not on the marketplace, easily reached, but we can help people with that. But people are smartly looking at things. They're also going to say, does the gross sales make sense? Like in a lot of businesses that make 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe 20% of the gross sales to the profit to the bottom line. But if something is really ridiculous, people are going to be really curious. So if you have casually put your numbers together and said, well, it's grossing $1 million and it's netting 500,000, most businesses it can't happen like that. So people know instinctively that there's something really wrong, even though that looks more attractive and you think you'd get more buyers looking at your business. Look, there's always exceptions to every rule, but in general, people are looking at different things. If they're looking at a heating and air conditioning company, or they're looking at your pizza restaurant, for goodness sakes, they don't expect you to be taking home 50% of the gross sales. The numbers have to be within a reason, and people are looking at that information. So just be aware of it. Does the ratio of seller's discretionary earnings, that's that owner benefit that you work, if you're working there, does it even make sense? Okay? Number 3, let's talk about that. The reason for sale. A lot of people want to know the rest of the story. Like, why are you getting out of this business out there? Don't be deceptive. Don't be lying. You can just say it. Darn, I'm burned out. I've done this for 17 years. I'm ready to move on to something else. Or I'm ready to retire. Or I'm whatever. Now, people are going to be really suspicious if you say retirement. And by the way, I only want 1 year non-compete because I want to get back into the business after I retire. People are going to be suspicious of that. But if it makes sense, people want to feel comfortable. They want to be nervous. They want to be made comfortable and not nervous about their decision about it. Does the stated reason make sense? Okay? People are getting out for all kinds of reasons. There's no reason to feel ashamed or bothered. And maybe you want to be private. So maybe you want to say health. You know, I've had several clients that have taken time off because they are caring for aging parents and they need the flexibility. One of the customers that we had sold a retail store that was operating 6 days a week to buy something that was on internet-based sales company so she could spend time with her mom as the needs arise. There's a lot of different reasons, but be honest, truthful, and help people feel comfortable with that decision. You know, the hours worked by a single working owner. Most of us that own our businesses, like myself, we usually put in more than 40 hours a week, but give people an idea of how long you're working on it. If you've gotten to the point where you're only working 20 hours a week, that's really, really great. It doesn't mean necessarily that the new person is going to be able to work those few hours if you've got it running like a top, but maybe someday they can reach out to that. On the other hand, if you're working 80 or 90 hours, tell them about that. That may or may not be a game changer, or it might be something where they say, I just can't work that many hours, and they might not feel comfortable on it. Okay? Does the owner make reasonable hours? So here's a little hourglass and a clock, and I'm sharing that information. Okay, one note, the seller's discretionary calculation accounts for only one working owner. So that means like if you've got your spouse and your kids all working in the business and you're talking about that household income, that's not the same thing as seller's discretionary earnings. If you got any questions, reach out to us. You'll see our information at the very end, but keep in mind BuyBizUSA. That's our website, BuyBizUSA. You can find our contact information. You can say, hey, don't talk so fast in the future, or why don't you share more information about this, or can you explain more about that seller's discretionary earnings and that one person working in the business? I know I ramble a bit, but I try to keep it fast because I know you probably don't have a lot of time. So how long has the business owner been around? That's a really key issue. So why would that be an issue? Why is that important? Well, one of the issues is that, I'll go back to this slide out there, is that if people have only had it for 6 or 7 months, they bought it from somebody else that's been around for 12 years, they're going to be suspicious. Like, why is this person wanting to flip the business in less than a year? Or maybe 2 years is even nerve-wracking a bit. So when they look for how long you've been in business, not just how long the business has been around. I mentioned earlier when that non-compete issue came around, are you going to give a nice, healthy time frame where they just say, hey, I'm not going to work in the business for a long period of time, and I'll give you a non-compete that makes you comfortable. In some states, there's a reasonableness in terms of how long the non-compete goes for, and it might be 5 years or 7 years, etc. Be reasonable, but give people plenty of time to make them feel comfortable. Is training involved, and is the non-compete reasonable? I already just talked the non-compete, but the training is also another issue where people are going to want to make sure that they're going to give you a price for the business. You don't want to do a la carte. And by the way, for every week I stick around, I need $2,000. Work on a price, for goodness sakes, that gives them a reasonable amount of time. So I want $1 bazillion for my business, and out of that, I'm going to give you 4 weeks of training because I think that would be what the average person would take to learn to run this business. Okay? Be reasonable to wonder. Also talk about the business licensing. If there's a need for getting a special license, and we do a lot of work in the construction field and industries where you need a license that take 2 to 4 years, sometimes longer to get, be upfront. Tell people about that. And are you willing to help out? Or do you know somebody's willing to help out? If not, that limits the amount of people that are already, to the people that already have a license to buy the business if that's required. If you can't help them with that, or you don't have an employee that can help them with that, or a friend, or somebody's willing to hold the license. And some states are tougher about this than other ones, but realize that somebody's got to have a private licensure to run the business. And believe me, there's a lot of people, even corporate America, that said, golly, I'd really love to be in the door and window installation company or owning electrical contracting company, but they got to figure out a way so they can legally operate in the area that you're on. So know the legal requirements and don't rely on the seller or the owner. So we tell people, find out, see if you can find your own resources. So we're encouraging them to. But if you know somebody that can do all that, or you're willing to stick around for a certain fee, then you bring that up and say, hey, I'm going to stick around for a period of time. All right, the profit and loss statements. In some records, it just shows on advertisements like BizBuySell. They don't care about where you get the records. Just say what you want, advertise the business, and throw that information. But there are other really quality websites where people are stating not only here's what I'm earning, but this is reflected in my profit and loss statement and or my tax returns. But there's other things where people say, well, you just got to believe me, or I'm going to prove it to you later on, or stick in the store for a couple of weeks, or here's a projection. I had lost money the last 7 years, but January looks pretty good, and I think after that I'm going to make about $400,000 in profit. People get really nervous about things that they don't have a lot of evidence and information on. So if you can, start to prepare your business with documents and details so that people can fully understand where you're getting that information. If there's IRS documents or tax returns that are going to support the earnings, the smart buyer, and certainly if he goes through the SBA, are going to require that you sign a 4506T, which tells the IRS, hey, send these people a copy of the tax returns that were submitted. All right, the net expenses, people want to make sure that they're not paying any more, and there's these things called add backs or adjusting, right? We talked about maybe you have a car, or you have a payment, or you have a spouse that's not working in the business. Are the expenses and are the adjustments to show that are really making a lot more money than I showed at the bottom line of my tax returns really justified? Again, you can reach out if you have any questions regarding this. You can control some of the costs, but rent is one of the factors that's really, really high. But people need to know, hey, how long is the rent? How long is it good for? Do I have a couple 5-year renewal options? And oh, by the way, if you are selling your business with an SBA loan on it, the SBA needs to see that there's at least options that go for the length of time that the loan is. So if there's a 10-year loan, then you need to see a 1-year lease and 5 more options or something along those lines to justify and work to that out there. So find out, is a lease option and is the number comparable? So if your rent is really, really high, it's choking your business, that too is going to make people suspicious. Don't just say or rely on the fact that, oh, somebody will be able to improve the business so they can pay the high rent. More likely that's going to be a deal killer. And landlords are often unlikely to sympathize. So they're not going to say to you, oh, you want to buy this business and you want me to lower my rent by $4,000 a month? Not likely. Go away, hit the road, Jack, etc. They're not usually going to help out. If you can negotiate up front, then negotiate up front and make sure you can pass it on to your seller. The SBA, I mentioned, is a key way. Financing businesses is really, really important. I mean, who pays all cash in your neighborhood for houses? Who pays all cash for cars? So if you want to say, well, they just have to come up with the cash to buy my business because I don't trust them, I don't want to finance them, I hear you. But keep in mind that slide I showed you early on, a large percentage of the businesses don't sell. One reason is that a lot of people in America will expect to finance things. They expect to finance the houses. They expect to finance their cars and build time in. Before the SBA, almost everybody financed businesses, or they just sold it for the worth of the chairs. If you go before Prohibition, you look at the value of businesses. Quite often they were based on the fact that, hey, here's some chairs, some tables, some glasses. Take over this bar. I'm done and out of here. And the Prohibition and the readjustment of understanding value changed radically just because of that particular law. Really kind of cool stuff to look up and find out. But realize that somehow people generally are going to need to finance a business. And also keep in mind that whatever the price of the business is, deep in the center of a target, imagine people have a price for $1 million. That center of the target, there's forget the center of the target. Just realize that there's a lot more people that have 10% of any particular given price than the actual price being asked for. So there's a lot more people there than are that, and somehow you need to help finance businesses. All right, so we encourage businesses to be SBA pre-qualified. If you can get your business to be SBA pre-qualified for a reasonable price, realize that you're probably less than 10% of the businesses on the marketplace. I just recently looked at a survey of 2,000, just under 2,500, 2,497 businesses, and then I typed in the criteria. I said, show me businesses that are SBA pre-qualified, that support their financials with tax returns returns and or profit and loss statements, and that we're making over $125,000 a year in sellers' discretionary earnings. And I got 197. That's less than 10% of that group of businesses. So realize that if you want to sell your business, one way you can stand out really well is being SBA pre-qualified. Okay. Anyway, enough of that. Realize that people are looking to start up businesses, looking to buy businesses where they can start up versus starting a business. Okay. I'm rambling so much. I just want to share with you. Here's my contact information. When you sell a business, you share a legacy. And when you buy a business, people begin a dream. This is Brian Stevens with a Legacy Venture Group, but our website is BuyBizUSA. If you'd like a free textbook or an ebook on how to sell a business, you can even text BuyBizUSA to 22828. And you can even find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. Just type in BuyBizUSA. And we're also on YouTube a lot. Okay? Anyway, thank you. Make great things happen. Sell your business and live a good dream when you're ready to go forward. And if we can help you out, feel free to give us a call. Bye-bye.